Welcome to the Homeschool Mom Podcast, where biblical truth informs our everyday lives as homeschool moms. I'm your host, Janelle Knutson, a Christian, a wife, and a homeschooling mom to 7 children. You can find the show notes for each episode of the Homeschool Mom Podcast over at janelleknutson.com/podcast. Hey, homeschool moms. Today I wanted to share with you about our 4-day school week that we tried out this year. When I shared about it in the beginning of the school year, I got quite a few questions, and 2 questions I got a lot of. And one of them was, are you going to school year round? If you're only doing 4 days a week to fit everything in, are you going to be going through the summer? The answer to that is no. We are just following a traditional school year, and we will have the summer off. The second question that I got was, well, then are you doubling up on subjects and lessons? And the answer to that is also no, not really. So what I thought would be helpful for you guys is to share a little bit of background first about why I even decided to try a 4-day school week this year. And then I also want to share how we actually made it work. How did that actually work if we're not homeschooling through the summer, if we're not really doubling up? How did we make that work? I also wanted to share how it actually was working for us. Like, did this work well? Am I regretting that we did it this way? And then finally, I wanted to answer a question that I know will come up, and that is, would it have worked in the past? Because spoiler alert here, it really is working well for us. This was a wonderful school year. I absolutely loved it. The kids loved it. This 4-day school week worked so well for us. It was just such a blessing. But when I really think about it, I mean, at first I thought, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. Why did I not do this before? And then looking back, I thought, you know what? I don't think this would have worked in the past, and it might not necessarily work for us in the future. And so I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why a 4-day school week wouldn't have worked for us in the past and may not work for us in the future. Hopefully that'll be helpful for you as you think about whether this would work for your family or not. So a little bit of background first, and that is that we have done, only 3 or 4 days of school a week in the past, but we always did it with a year-round schedule. So when I had a lot of little ones, and I'm pregnant or I just had a baby, I've got a lot of toddlers, I've got kids who are getting sick, there's lots of interruptions, lots of things that just happen, and we needed to not do school on a particular day. So we just schooled year round, and we took a lot of breaks when we needed them. So in one sense, we've done, school where we've only probably done 3 or 4 days a week, but we've always done it year round, and it never really was intentional. It was just life's happening. We are only getting to 2 or 3 days or 4 days of school each week. But for this year in particular, as I was sitting down and writing out my yearly homeschool goals, and if you don't know about making yearly homeschool goals, I have a whole YouTube video on that, which I will put in the show notes. And I also have a free printable to help you kind of think through what your homeschool goals are for your family. I'll leave that link down below, not down below, but in the show notes as well. But as I was thinking through our yearly homeschool goals for this, last summer, what one really big goal that stood out to me was that I really wanted more time with my kids to discuss things with them. I wanted to free up time so that there were more opportunities to just sit down and have heart-to-heart conversations, more time to just talk to them about what was on their minds, more time to take rabbit trails and to do fun stuff with what we were learning in school, and just more time to have fun as a family. And so I really just this time with my kids, time for discussion, time to have fun was really a big goal for my family for this last homeschool year. But as I was thinking through that, I thought, how am I going to accomplish that? And I realized I have to have more time. We have to slow down the pace of our life and our homeschool to have the time. We can't be rushing through all of our school to just get it done because we have another activity to go to and then another activity to go to. And we needed time. We needed to slow things down. So that meant that we had to say no to a lot of things that took up time, and that really forced us to just be rushing. And that's not a bad thing. There's been seasons, there's been years where our goal is to get our kids involved in a lot of outside activities and to help them explore and, just try out interests and talents and things like that. And so we've had years where that's our goal, is to get our kids exposed to a lot of different opportunities. And so that meant we're rushing around a lot. And that met the goal for that school year. But this year, I really wanted time to connect with my kids. And so that meant saying no to a lot of outside activities. It also meant saying yes to some different curriculum that allowed me to teach my kids more one-on-one or in groups, where the curriculum would help foster opportunities for discussion. So it meant saying no to some curriculum and saying yes to some new curriculum. Now, I thought that this would be great, but I didn't know if it was going to be possible. I thought, how are we going to do a formal, school, do formal school 4 days a week, and just get everything in? And I wanted to use that 5th day for field trips, or to work on larger projects, or to do practical life skills, or sometimes just to have fun as a family, or to get things done around the house. So most of our Fridays were still educational, but I wanted them to be more fun and just interactive and doing things together as a family. So I thought, how am I going to make this work? And so that moves me into kind of the second thing that I wanted to talk to you about, is how we actually did make it work. So first off, like I said, was saying yes to some different curriculum where the curriculum was actually set up to be 4 days a week. And so an example of this was Knotgrass history. I used Knotgrass history for my first grader, third grader, so 2 in elementary, for my 6th and 8th grader, so 2 in middle school, and also for my 10th grader and my 12th grader, so 2 in high school. So I had 6 kids using Knotgrass history, and Knotgrass history is set up a little different depending on the curriculum and the ages that, the grades that they are for. But for the elementary age, we used our Star Spangled Story, and it is actually 3 lessons a week. So you can spread those 3 lessons out over 5 days. You can spread them out over 4 days. You can do them in 3 days. So it was set up perfectly. So saying yes to a new curriculum allowed me to make this 4-day school week possible. So what we did with Knotgrass for my elementary age kids was, there's 3 lessons. We did the first lesson on Monday, the second lesson on Tuesday, the third lesson on Wednesday. On Thursday, we did the read aloud. So you can get a literature packet with the Knotgrass history. So we did our read alouds with that literature add-on. We did that on Thursdays and just had a nice time to sit and have some time reading. And then on Fridays, we would do one of the big activities or projects that Knotgrass had for that unit that we did that week. Now, we didn't do every activity or project. Some Fridays we would take a field trip related to what we were learning about in Knotgrass. So when we were learning about Lewis and Clark and Pocahontas, we were able to go around in our community and find all of the statues that were of Lewis and Clark and Pocahontas. And so that was a lot of fun. So we had a field trip day to reinforce that. Some Fridays we would do a project that Knotgrass had. Other times we just wouldn't do anything related to history on Friday. We would do something fun related to math, or what another child was learning, or a science project, or we would just play games together as a family. But Knotgrass, their elementary curriculum, was really ideal. It was set up to work for a 4-day school week. Their Uncle Sam and You curriculum that my middle schoolers used is set up with 4 lessons, and then the 5th lesson that would normally be on the 5th day is a holiday where your student learns about a particular holiday that we celebrate in the U.S. And so I was able to adapt that where my kids did the 4 lessons on Monday through Thursday, and then we saved the holidays, or I should say my intention was to save the holidays and read through that material when the holiday actually happened. But when the holiday actually happened, we did talk about the holiday, but we didn't pull out the textbooks and read about the holiday. So that's okay. Sometimes you get to the curriculum that you thought you'd use, and sometimes you don't. And so that's perfectly okay. But it was set up with 4 lessons to work through each week. And then, like I said, that 5th one was a holiday. And we just didn't do those. So my middle schoolers were able to do their history, fit it in 4 days a week without having to double up on anything. Now, for my senior, jumping ahead to my senior, she was pretty much just working at her own pace. She has a job, and so she was trying to juggle her job and school. And so, I don't have much input for what she did because there were days she doubled and tripled up because she had to catch up after, working for several days. But for my 10th grader, she was using the Knotgrass U.S. History curriculum. I cannot remember the name of it off the top of my head right now, but she was using that one. And the way it's set up is there are 5 lessons, but the first 4 lessons are a history lesson. The 5th lesson is more of a Bible lesson. We were not using it as a Bible curriculum. We weren't counting that as her Bible. And so she would do the 4 lessons, and then the Bible one, she would just read, but she wouldn't do any of the work for it. And so she just kind of spread the Bible reading out over the week. And so in one sense, she kind of had to double up on that, but not really. She was able to just spread it out more evenly. So again, one of the ways we made this work for us was that we used curriculum. I said yes to curriculum that fit a 4-day week schedule. A couple other curriculums that fit really well were some of the courses from Master Books that my students did. They were set up for just 4 days a week. So we just picked different curriculum. We also chose curriculum that was really easy to adapt. For example, Math UC. Math UC is really easy to adapt to just 4 days and not make my kids feel like they're doubling up on things. So we were able to work through the Math UC math books, the curriculum without any problem. I didn't make them do every single worksheet that's in there. We were able to skip over things that they knew well. So that was a curriculum that would be an example of something that was easy to adapt. So another thing was that some curriculum that we used this school year, we had already started the previous year. So we didn't have a full year's worth of curriculum to get through. So an example of this is my 3rd grader had started a BJU Press English curriculum in 2nd grade. And so we just needed to finish about 3/4 of it. There's 3/4 of it left to work through this school year. And so that fit really well into a 4-day school week. We were able to get it all done in that amount of time without having to double up. So that's how I was able to make it work for us without doubling up, without having to work through the summer. We just chose and said yes to curriculum that was already set up for 4 days a week. We also used curriculum and said yes to curriculum that was easy to adapt to 4 days a week. And then we already had some curriculum that we had started the previous school year, and we were able to carry it through. There were a couple courses, especially for my high schoolers, that were not set up for 4 days a week, that was not easy to adapt, and so they did have to double up on some of those. And those were just things that they would take some time on Friday to do if we weren't doing a field trip or doing some big activities of family. Then they would just spend Friday a few hours working on that curriculum that they needed to make sure that they got in all of the time for. Now, one of the benefits for us here living in Idaho is we don't have a certain number of days that we have to get in for school each year. And so it didn't really matter if I counted that fifth day as a school day or not when we were doing field trips and such. But for those of you who do have to get in a certain number of days, you certainly can count Friday, or whichever day is your fifth day that you're taking off from school or formal school. You can still count that as a school day because your child is still learning. If you are cleaning your house, they're learning. If they are baking with you or cooking in the kitchen, they're learning. That fifth day is also a great opportunity for them to explore things that they're interested in, to do art projects, to learn woodworking, to go out and apprentice with somebody. So you can still count that as a school day in a lot of cases if you need to get in a certain number of days. All right, so third, I wanted to talk about how it was working for us. And like I said in my spoiler alert, it worked great. I think we just enjoyed the slower pace. We enjoyed having that fifth day to do fun stuff. Sometimes it was educational, sometimes it wasn't, but it just worked really great. And I felt like it took off a huge pressure off of me. I felt like 5 days a week, for 18 years, this is our 19th year homeschooling, but for much of my homeschool journey, just trying to get in 5 days of school all the time, it just became kind of wearisome. And I was like, we're never doing anything fun. We don't have time for projects. We don't have time for field trips. And when we do field trips, we're squeezing them in and having to try to do schoolwork before or after the field trip. And so it was just so nice. It was such a more relaxing year for me and for the kids. I found that my kids were retaining more information. And this really wasn't because we were doing school 4 days a week, but it was mostly because we cut out a lot of other stuff out of our week, so we had more time to slow down and go over things and to answer their questions and to take rabbit trails and to really make what they were learning come to life, to answer questions. We had time to make it stick and for them to retain the information. And it helped that fifth day, which was usually Friday, but not always, but that fifth day we used to reinforce what the kids were learning. And so if we took a field trip, we're talking about what they had just learned that week. When we did our field trip for Pocahontas and Lewis and Clark, we're talking and remembering everything that we had learned that previous week. And so that's reinforcing all of the things that they have learned. The hands-on projects and hands-on activities that we did, the educational games that we played, incorporating read-alouds really helped reinforce what we were learning in history. And so just being able to slow down, have time, and have that fifth day to do some fun educational projects and activities and field trips really helped my kids retain the information more. We also had a lot more time for discussion, and this also helped, information stick when you're able to just sit down and talk about things. Like I said, get off on rabbit trails a little bit sometimes, but just to talk about it so that it isn't just something that they learn, but something that they are explaining to siblings, they're explaining to their dad, they're asking more questions about, we're researching more. That really helped with the retention of information. And so it really, like I said, wasn't just the 4 day a week schedule that helped my kids retain more information. It was more the fun activities, the slower pace, the time for discussion that really enhanced their learning and helped them to retain the information that they learned. So this was really an enjoyable year for us for homeschooling, probably one of my favorite homeschool years. The fact that we had time for field trips and to do projects and science experiments, and I didn't feel overwhelmed. I mean, that is huge. But I don't know if it could have worked in years past. I don't know if it's even going to work next year for us. And so let me just wrap up with that. Why would it maybe not have worked in the years past? So in the past, I wouldn't have had the time for the prep work that was needed, and I might not have had all the time for teaching. So what I mean by that is there was a little bit more prep work on my part because I did have to adapt some curriculum to fit into a 4-day week. So I had to take the time to sit down and think through, what am I going to cut out? What am I going to include? What's the most important? And so that took time. I don't know that I would have had that time, or I should say, I know I wouldn't have had that time in the past when I had a whole bunch of little ones. That just would not have worked for me. Also, in the past, I didn't always have the time to do so much teaching. And that was one of the benefits of this 4-day school week for us, is that I wanted opportunity to have more discussions with my kids. And just thinking back in years past when I had health issues, when I had a whole bunch of little ones, babies, when I was exhausted from being pregnant or just having a new baby, I really was so blessed by using BJU Press, their video lessons, by using more open and go curriculum, but those were set up for a 5-day school week. And so I needed those things to help get my kids educated in those seasons, but I wouldn't have had the time to adapt things. And I certainly wouldn't have had the time to say, okay, well, instead of watching these 2 video lessons today, I'm going to teach all of those 2 lessons to you in one day. I wouldn't have time for that. The reason I was using video lessons was because I had a baby and a toddler and a preschooler and other kids to homeschool, and I needed some kids to be learning more independently. So I just don't know that I would have been able to have the time to adapt curriculum to a 4-day week, or have the time to teach the things, use the curriculum that we use this year. I just don't think I would have been able to use that in the past. So those are the 2 main reasons why I don't think I would have been able to use it in the past when I had a whole bunch of little ones. Now that is changing as more curriculum providers are providing 4-day-a-week options with their curriculum. So maybe if I had some of the options that are available today, I could have made it work. I don't know. But looking back with the resources, the situations I was in, I just don't think I could have made a 4-day school week work for us without, homeschooling through the summer. But as I was thinking, in the future, like, this was so great. I want to be doing a 4-day school week for as long as I still have to homeschool, which is, I think, 12 more years still. So, as I was thinking about, yes, we're going to do a 4-day school week from here on out. This is wonderful. And then I went, wait a second. This works so well because of the slower pace that we moved at. The slower pace was key to this 4-day school week being successful for my family. But I don't know, even next year, thinking about goals for my family in the upcoming school year, I don't know if we'll be able to have that slower pace that made the 4-day school week possible and successful for us. So, in the upcoming year, I'm thinking about, putting some of my kids in like a co-op class situation. Okay, that's going to, be challenging with a 4-day school week. I'm thinking about, can I get to women's Bible study next year? Okay, I have kids who want to do music lessons and sports and different activities and, possibly apprenticeships and things like that. That's adding to our schedule. Those might be very good things next year for us to do, but they might be things that make it so that we need to do school 5 days a week. We need to use curriculum that's going to be a little bit easier on me so that we can get to all the places that we need to go without stressing mom out with having to teach everything, right? It's really hard for us to be running here and there and everywhere and then me having to come home and teach everything. So just thinking through next year, we might go back to a 5-day school week. A 4-day school week might not work for us next year. Still thinking about it, still praying about it, still researching curriculum and trying to figure it all out. But all that to say is that this 4-day school week was such a blessing to us this year. It was amazing. I loved it. The kids loved it. Would I like to continue doing this from here on out? Absolutely. Is that possible? I don't know. And that's why at the beginning of each school year, I always, or I should say at the end of each school year, as I'm thinking about the upcoming school year, I really take time to pray and ask the Lord to help me determine what goals I have for our family in that upcoming school year for each individual child. And then I pick curriculum and we schedule activities based on whether or not that curriculum is going to help us meet those goals or not. And so as I pray about and think through what the goals are for our family in the next homeschool year, I'm going to then need to say yes to some curriculum and no to other curriculum that's going to help us meet those goals. And so I'm hoping that there is curriculum out there that I can use and that'll allow us to meet all the goals we have for next year, that the Lord has for us next year, I should say. I'm hoping there's curriculum that we can use that'll meet those goals and still do a 4-day school week. But we'll see if that is something that's possible or not. So I hope this answered some of your questions about our 4-day school week, and hope it helped you think through whether or not maybe this would be a good option for your family. I will say that I have a friend who has done a 4-day school week from the very beginning. She's already graduated some kids from her homeschool, and she's always made it work with co-ops, with other activities. So it's certainly possible to do, but is it possible for everybody to do in every season? At least for me, I don't think it's possible, or it would have been possible for me in the past, and maybe not even in the future. So just a reminder that all of our families are different, all of our homeschools are different, and what the Lord has for us and wants us to accomplish and the means by which He wants to accomplish those things are going to be different for all of our families and different in different seasons. So the key isn't to say, I want to do a 4-day school week and I'm going to make it happen. The key is just trusting the Lord and going to Him in prayer and letting Him guide and direct your family and your homeschool.